Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Books with Nate, and today I have a video for you that I've been meaning to make for quite a while now. That is my review of 2023 in regards to reading, and then what I plan to read in 2024, and sort of goals for the channel, and just goals for reading in general. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. So in 2023, I read around 28 books. I think my goal was to try and get to 30, but I read some pretty chunky books last year, so I can forgive myself, I think. But yeah, it was 11 fantasy books, 9 science fiction, sci-fi, 5 manga, and then 3 fiction books. Yeah, I was kind of surprised how much sci-fi I read. I didn't really read that much the year prior. This year I started reading, or last year rather, I started reading Foundation by Isaac Asimov. That's a very, foundational series for science fiction. And I think that just kind of like sparked my interest in some more modern series. I only read the first two. I do plan to finish it at some point or just restart it, I think. But yeah, I was just surprised by how much sci-fi I've read. And then, yeah, I think another big highlight for me was, yeah, just like I think getting more into my reading a little bit more and just trying to understand it some more and, digest it a little bit better than before versus just, constantly trying to like get through something. So, yeah, I was pretty happy with what I read and the amount that I read. I'm not saying you need to read if you read one book. I think that's great. So yeah, this isn't like a competition, but yeah, I was just happy with the amount of books I read and what I read and how I read them. So just in terms of some like specific book highlights, maybe some of my favorites, it would definitely be House of Chains and Midnight Tides by Stephen Erickson and the Malazan Book of the Fallen. I know I talk about this series a lot on this channel, but I think rightfully so. It is these two books were just so incredible in regards to their character work, the story, the writing, the themes. I think those are two books that definitely stick with me a lot, and I definitely think about them quite a bit. Yeah, those were just incredible books. Also, Abaddon's Gate by the duo James S. A. Corey in the Expanse series. This is the third book in the Expanse series. I think just in terms of enjoyment, I really enjoyed that book. I think I gave it like a 5 out of 5 or something. It was just really fun and really. I think there were a lot of like potential themes that came up and plot points that I think were interesting to explore more. I didn't really enjoy book 4 as much. I do plan to continue it, but yeah, I'd say Abaddon's Gate number 3 was really good and definitely a highlight for me. And just kind of overall review again of the year, I didn't really finish many series that I wanted to, or yeah, I just didn't really finish a lot of series, which is okay, but it kind of just continues the cycle of reading books by the same author. So, which is fine. But I'm also a serial like starting a new series kind of guy. So yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I think I just wanted to finish some more series. I think I wanted to finish Malazan potentially since I started in 2022, but as the year kind of went on, that just didn't happen. I also think I wanted to finish or at least get pretty deep into the Expanse, but that didn't really happen. So it is what it is. But yeah. So now on to what I am currently reading into 2024, and then what I plan to read in 2024. So you can see this stack of books here. This is what I'm currently reading and what I want to read, kind of generally speaking. So first up is I do plan to continue the saga of Recluse by L.E. Modesitt Jr. This is a fantasy series that's kind of has its own unique like take on a hero's journey. I think it's a pretty like tame take, but in the best way possible. yeah, I really enjoyed the first book. It was a big surprise for me, I think, in 2023. This is kind of, in terms of chronological order and publishing order, it's not lined up. So I think this book takes place like 500 years before the first book. This is the second book. So I don't know if I'll read this one necessarily. I might just actually go way back ahead of time, like in the past, and read some of those books. I'm not really sure, but yeah, I do want to continue this series. It'll probably be like a one-off here and there. I'm not like super invested in it, but I do like it enough to continue it. And then, of course, we have Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is Reaper's Gale. I'm currently like 250 pages into this. It took me a while to get into this book in particular, but I'm starting to enjoy it more. But yeah, I do plan to finish Malazan. Hopefully, I set my goal for April, but it'll probably be more like June or something. But yeah, no, I'm not sure if I'm prepared for the ending of this series. I think it will just be a pretty emotional ride, and I'm also just looking. I mean, again, I mean this in a good way. Like, I'm also just looking forward to finishing it, just so I can kind of focus on some other things because, yeah, this series takes up quite a lot in regards to energy and sort of mental capacity of what I'm reading. So yeah, I do plan to finish it this year, and I should finish it this year. And then next up, we have A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. This is Clash of Kings. I read A Game of Thrones. I kind of just read it over over 2023. I kind of started in April and then finished it finally in September or so, or October. And I really enjoyed it. And I think I just missed kind of that old school kind of fantasy feel, but in a more modern lens. I think his prose, and like an aspect of that is like the prose, I think was really well written. And I also like the world, and I think the world he's created is pretty interesting. But yeah, I like the world and his writing, and I won't finish it this year. I'll probably just read this book this year, to be honest, if anything. Yeah, I know it's a book, or a series rather, that I can kind of fall back on if I want to, and I'm really happy with that. And then next up we have Red Rising trilogy by Pierce Brown. This was actually a surprise for me. I plan to make a review of the trilogy once I finish it. I probably won't finish it until February or March, but yeah, I was like, wow. I think just the character work and the world that it's set in, and just like the plot and how it moves. I just like how fast paced it is. I like Darrow, the main character that we follow. Yeah, I just think it's like really good and really entertaining, to be honest. I think if you get anything out of this series, it's fun. It's a good time, and yeah, I definitely recommend it, and I plan to finish it soon. And then another series that I'm currently reading is The Expanse by James S.A. Corey. I don't know why I start these like 10-book series, but here we are. And this is Nemesis Games. This is the 5th book. I do plan to probably just read a synopsis or a plot summary of book 4, because I kind of remember what happens, but yeah, I don't really want to reread that book, to be honest with you. But yeah, I do plan to continue this once I finish up with some other series, other sci-fi series that I'll get into later. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I do plan to continue it, and I'm invested in it. So that's really all I can say about it. But this is a pretty expansive science fiction series, and yeah, I think the characters are interesting. I think the sort of like a crew essentially is interesting. I just think it got in the way of some other books that were similar enough where I was like, okay, I got to set one of these down. So this was it. But I do plan to pick this back up once I finish up with some other things. Then also, since I don't have a physical copy of it, is the Sun Eater series by Christopher Ruocchio. I'm currently reading Demon in White, the 3rd book. Again, this was kind of a surprise because I didn't really enjoy the first half of the second book, but it definitely picked up in the second half of that book. And yeah, I am invested in it. I do want to try to get to book 6, I think, by the time, or no, was it book 7? I don't remember. The book that's releasing in April, I do want to try to catch up to it, but I don't think I will. But yeah, I do plan to buy the new release and read it this year because, yeah, this is a great series. And I think I'm talking with Christopher Rocchio, not Christopher Rocchio, no, Christopher Navo, a different Chris, as well as Dan over at the Black and Blue Collar Reader, I believe is his full name. We're going to do a discussion on the Halloween Dark, the second book. So, yeah, those discussions are probably going to come up at some point. And then, as well as just finishing the series, and yeah, I really like it. And that's an example of like too similar of a book to The Expanse, where I was like, I got to pick one. So, yeah, Sun Eater, plan to finish it this year, hopefully. The other series I plan to continue is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is the sci-fi classic. I read the first book in October and I enjoyed it. I didn't really like the ending too much, just the last chapter or so. I don't think the hype was really there for me, but I really did like the book overall, and I'm interested in the sort of more philosophical, dreamy type stuff that I've heard is more apparent in 2 and 3, Messiah and Children of Dune. And yeah, it's definitely something I want to read. I liked it enough to continue it. I also want to try to get more into it before, or just around, the Dune movies too. So yeah, I think Children of Dune Dune Messiah is the second book. So hopefully I'll read that once I finish up with the Sun Eater series, and then get to book 3 some other time this year. And then finally, in regards to series that I am currently reading, this is another chunky series, is The Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. Yeah, I started this on a whim on a Tuesday night because I was kind of bored. And I'd honestly been wanting to read Brandon Sanderson for quite some time again because I haven't read him in a few years. And this is his sort of epic fantasy, essentially. And it's pretty epic, and it's pretty good. This is The Way of Kings. I'm about a third of the way through it right now. I'm kind of doing audio, ebook, and just kind of consuming it a lot. And I really do enjoy it. It's a little slow at times, even though it's like a pretty fast-paced book overall. But yeah, no, I'm just happy to be back with Brandon Sanderson because, quite frankly, I have been wanting to read him for a while, especially with book 5 coming out now in December. I do plan to catch up to it by then. I think I'll focus more on this series once I finish Malazan, but I just needed some of this right now. I would say it kind of scratches that itch that Malazan can give sometimes. It's not as confusing, but and maybe the writing isn't as good, the prose rather. But yeah, I would say this definitely gives that kind of like oomph that that Malazan gives. I think there's definitely kind of that like not explaining things fully, but I know Sanderson, I know he will explain it in either this book or the next book or whatever, versus Malazan, which sometimes things never get explained or they just go completely over my head. So yeah, I'm excited to continue the series. It's like one I was like, oh, once I started reading it, I was like, yeah, I'm into this. So yeah. And then another quick series I'm reading is Vinland Saga. I'm like almost done with it. I'll definitely finish it, I think, in the next few months. I'm taking my time with it just because I just really enjoy it. So yeah, there's no rush to finish it for me. This is a great manga. I think it's a good, not over the top manga, in terms of like expressions or gore and violence or what have you. I think it's thematically really well done in regards to anti-war, anti-violence, and just exploring, time period in this medium that was fairly violent. And I just think the author just did a great job with this series. And I think the last volume I read, it was such a good book, I guess. It was such a good volume. I think the exploration of death and meaning around death, especially exploring a culture where, death is such a important part of, or rather the afterlife is such an important part of the overall culture versus just the religion. I think that was extremely powerful and really well done. So I plan to finish this series and recommend you all to read it because it's really good. And now we're moving on to series or books I want to read. I don't have them all here, but let's just start with, I definitely want to read some more standalones, fantasy books. I don't know which ones off the top of my head, but I think that's just something I want to fit more into my schedule. Even if it's just like fiction, I definitely want to read more Stephen King. Just like read some of his books because I do like his writing. I also plan to read some more classics like Crime and Punishment or like The Three Musketeers and stuff like that, or Count of Monte Cristo. I read Frankenstein, just finished it last month, and it's something that I feel like I'm missing out on some works here. So that's a plan for sure. I also do really want to read more women authors, especially in the sci-fi fantasy world. This includes C.J. Cherryh, who's written the Fated Sun trilogy and the Chaucer series, and then as well as some other fantasy works. I also want to read Lois McMaster Bujold, I believe is her name, how you pronounce it. She's written some interesting looking sci-fi fantasy series as well, like the Curse of Shylon and the Vorkalind Saga. Those just seem kind of interesting to me. And then as well as, of course, Ursula K. Le Guin. Have Wizard of Earthsea here. It's like a 4-book compilation thing. I do want to read her works as well, like The Dispossessed and what's the other one? Something with Darkness, I believe. I do want to read more of her works for sure. It's just because I know she's really well respected in literature overall. And here's Fated Sun. This is just the first book by C.J. Cherryh. I have the 3 books kind of like this, and I just think the covers are really interesting. And I did try to pick up the big mass market paperback omnibus, and that was just, I didn't like reading that. So I was able to find these smaller, like kind of hardcover book club editions for pretty cheap. So anyways, I plan to read this hopefully once I finish Dune because they're kind of similar in vibe. C.J. Cherryh. And here's just some more like literature classics I want to read, like the Cossacks by Leo Tolstoy. It's really short, so that should be okay for me. I don't really know what it's about, but he's an author that I want to read. I do want to read more like Russian literature, as well as Augustus by John Williams. I know Laura over at Fantasy Awash is a big fan of this book, and Chris got this for me for our little, Secret Santa. So maybe I'll read this with him at some point, or just read it on my own. But it just seems like an interesting book. And then some series I do want to start is Full Metal Alchemist. This is the volumes 4 through 6. I read the first 3 over a year ago, and I really liked it, but I just kind of need to read one manga at a time, I think. So I do plan to continue this sometime soon. I like it. I reread volume 3 about a month ago, and I was like, just trying to get back into it all. And I think it's a really interesting kind of like a fantasy, sci-fi sort of thing. Yeah, no, it's cool. I'm into it. Yeah, no, I plan to read this more this year. And then I also plan to read the Long Price Quartet by Daniel Abraham. He's one of the duo in James S.A. Corey of The Expanse. This is sort of a slower fantasy series, and I do plan to start it with some folks over at the Unexpected Party Discord, which I'm a part of. And yeah, no, I think we plan to start that in March potentially. Luckily, the books are pretty short, so that's why I'm kind of like, yeah, I'll just read it whenever because, yeah, the books are short. And then finally, I do plan to continue reading some more Robin Hobb with Ship of Magic. I really enjoyed the first trilogy, the Farseer trilogy, except for the third book. But I heard this is a pretty solid read. So I'll probably read her more in the fall or the winter, just because I feel like her works just kind of emit that vibe more. So probably towards the end of the year or into 2025. But yeah, I do want to read more Robin Hobb because she's been staring at me on my shelf, and I'm like, okay, I'll get to you eventually. So yeah. And finally, I started this channel, which was a big surprise for me. I got to over 100 subs, which I was also surprised by. And you're all sticking around to hear me ramble and just talk about nonsense. So I appreciate that. Yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun, and I've met some great people. And yeah, no, it's just fun to like do this. So that's it from me today. Make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like, and comment on the video. Just let me know how the start of your new year is going. You know, like what's going on in the reading world for you. So yeah, thanks for sticking around, and thanks for watching. And I will talk to you soon.